In this video, we're going to take a look at a simple point-of-sale cash register system. The system shows all the receipts which have been processed and enables the user to create a new receipt. On the new receipt page, we can add an item to be purchased, a price, and a quantity. Submit that, and now you can see we see a total for all of the items in the order. Let's add an Android phone for $100, 2 of those, and you can see that the system is set up to calculate 6% sales tax. And if we make a mistake here or need to remove something, let's do this one again and only enter 1. You can see we can make changes to the items which have been added. And when a receipt is complete, we can save. Now you can see that in our list. It gives us a list of all the items that are purchased on that receipt, the created date, and the total for that receipt. And we have a total sales amount for all the receipts combined on the bottom. Now we can search. So we'll look for a bike. There we go. We can see just the items that have a bike, the receipts that have a bike. We can look at the filters. And for example, if let's say we want to delete filters and look for a sort. Let's say we want to sort these by their total price. You can see they've been sorted ascending and now descending. We can click back on any of the receipts, make changes or additions if we need to. And when a receipt is complete, we can email the contents of that receipt to the buyer. This little portion of the app is handled by an external Python script that I have running on an Anvil server. So we'll take a look at that. You can see the script has successfully emailed the contents of that receipt. And here in my email, you can see I've got a purchase of this set of items we just entered. So let's take a look at how this is built. First, we have 2 tables in a database that I call receipts. We have a line items table and a receipts table. The line items table stores each of the items which are purchased. And we can see we have an item, a price, a quantity, and a subtotal calculation. And also a line items column, which is a link. So the subtotal computes the field price times the quantity price times 1.06, which is the price plus 6%. So the values here are automatically computed. If we set this to be $11, you can see that gets readjusted immediately as it does in the application. The line items link links to this receipts table. The receipts table stores a created on field, which is when the receipt was created, automatically populated by the system. And then we have a list of receipts. Actually, that should say list of line items. Let's do that and edit that field here right now. Line items. And a total. So here we have a link, and this is a roll-up for the line items that are in the other table, and it rolls up, sums all of those values with a decimal place, with 2 decimal places in the number. And I've added a little prefix here, so it shows $, which is appropriate for that value. So that computation is easily performed, and we can use that in the application. So to be clear, the link table, whenever we add a set of line items, the link links to the particular receipt that that those line items are included in. So if I needed to move an item to another receipt, I could change this value here, or I could include it in another receipt, for example. We have this view grouped by that line items field because we want to group all of the receipts together. Okay, so that's our two database tables. One simple little link between the tables. Now for our application, basically got two pages. There's a cash register page, which we use to enter all the items in a receipt. And then there's the receipt page, which shows us all of those receipts and lets us edit any of them. So let's take a quick look at this. We'll start by looking at the New Receipt button. When that button is clicked, we've got two events that run. First event creates a new row in our receipts database, in the receipts table. And we are not adjusting the line items value because that is a roll-up value. Okay, so all we're doing is creating a new row in the receipts table. Then we are opening the page to the register page, cash register page, which is where we create that particular receipt. And to that page, we're passing the ID of this new receipt that we've created in the receipts table. So when that opens, let's follow that first here. Go to the cash register page, and you can see on the cash register page that this page accepts an ID, numeric ID, which is the ID we've passed of the particular receipt. And in this case, one that we just created, which will be empty when it's opened the first time. And here we have a grid. So that uses a data source. Let's take a look at our data sources on this page. We have a get single row data source, which gets a row from the receipts table, and that uses the parameter that we've passed. It's getting a single row. And then we're getting this other data source put together, which collects multiple rows from the line items table, so from the items that are being purchased. And we want to only, for this data source, collect line items where the parameter ID is equal to the one that's been passed to the page. So we'll only see those items in a particular receipt. That particular ID, the receipt with that ID that's been passed. And make this very clear here. By default, when you're setting up a filter like this, you're going to get a button that shows you that you can select rows. But we don't want to select a particular row. We want to select only rows which have this ID. So it's really important, if you haven't seen this little filter equation here, by default you're going to pick a static row. If you want to pick dynamic rows that are identified by a particular ID, make sure you click this little equation formula here, and that will adjust how you can select those values. And finally, we have another data source, which is a summarize field. So we have one of each of these types of sources on this page. And we're summarizing line items. And we're going to summarize the subtotal field. And the aggregation is that sum calculation. And again, we only want to include line items where the parameter ID is the one which has been passed for this particular receipt. So when we open this page, we pass that ID, and that ID is used to select all of our line items and also to perform calculations, the totals of all those line items. And here we have a few form entry fields. So they're required. You can see here this is required, and also needs to validate to be an actual number. Same here. And then when the submit button is submitted, this is where most of the magic happens. Let's do that again. Look at the events. So we have 3 events. We're going to Think about what we're doing here. We are adding a new item to the line items. So look, we're going to create a row in the receipts database in the line items table. And for that item column in the line items table, we are going to insert the item value here in this form. For the price column in that database table for this new row, we're going to use the price which has been entered by the user. And in the quantity column in that line items table for this new row, we are entering a quantity that has been entered by the user. Finally, down here, the line items column is the receipt, the link to the receipt table. And for that, we want to save this particular entry to that particular receipt. So by setting the ID that we've passed to the page, this passed parameter ID, we're ensuring that this new item gets associated with, linked to that particular receipt in the receipts column. Then finally, we're going to do some refreshing down here. We're going to refresh the data source, which will now show the new line item that's been added, that we just added. And then we're also going to refresh this data source, which is the summarize data source, which performs this calculation. So every time we add a new item, we get a refresh here, and we also get a refresh of the total. And again, those are the data sources we just took a look at, and that summarize total is just a sum of all those subtotal fields. Those subtotal fields are performed by the formula which calculates the price times the quantity times 1.06. So all our calculations are happening with no code, just using a formula on each line to perform that subtotal. Okay, we also have a remove button here. Let's take a look at this remove button. And you can see here, this has been added. So the column names are item, price, and quantity, but we've added a new button. And what that button does when it's clicked is three things. This is going to delete the row where the button has been clicked from the line items, and it's going to use the data source's ID for that row. Then we are going to do the same thing we did before, refresh this list and recalculate the total for the receipt down here. So we're refreshing both those data sources once that delete has been processed. So we get an updated view of the grid and we get an updated calculation. And so that's the majority of what's needed to actually build the receipt calculation in this little point of sale user interface. If we go back to the receipts page, you can see now we have a grid, and for that grid we have another data source up here. And again, we have a list multiple rows. This is going to list all the rows in the receipts table without any filters. And then we have a summarize field, which is going to summarize all of the receipt totals. Where on the previous page, we were summarizing all of the item subtotals for a receipt total. This is going to sum all of the totals for each of those receipts and give us a grand total down at the bottom of all the sales. So when we create a new receipt, we go to the other page. When we come back here, those new receipts will be updated in our view. So you can see what's being performed here is just a simple grid, set of grid populations, and this particular created on field is displayed as a link, and when it's clicked, it's going to navigate back to that register page, the cash register page, and again with the ID of the data source that's been selected. And what's being populated here is just the ID and the created on. Let's actually take the ID out so you can see how it's a little clearer. Date. If we wanted, we could very simply add some information here. Let's do this. I want to take the ID and I want to separate that by dash so you can see the ID of the receipt. Let's publish this, and you can see I made a little subdomain here, pointofsale.101compute.com, and you'll notice here that if I open this, we're going to get a page not found error, and the reason is I've set these pages so that they have their own particular path. Typically, when you start an application, you're going to want to set the path just to be a plain /, but in this case, I want to particularly leave that path empty, and so when I open my application, I need to go to the receipts page if I want to be able to see that sort of starting page that shows all the receipts. Okay, so we've got a full point of sale system here. Very simple to create, nicely useful. Let's create a receipt here, add an item, just make a little garbage item here, and enter that. Let's add some more here, give this a test, submit, and we can remove as we need, add more as we need, and save when we're done. And now we see that new entry here. And of course, if we want, on our back end, we can go into the database, look at our receipts. Let's get rid of this receipt, and we'll also delete the line items which were associated with that receipt. There we go. And if we go back to our page now, you can see that's reflected in the user interface of the app. So finally, the only thing that's left untouched here is when we go to receipt, if I want to get an email or send an email out to that buyer who's purchased this item, or if they call us later on and say, hey, can you send me a list of all the things that you have in your records, we can do that. So we type in the name or the email address, and then click this button. Now what this button does is it sends a request to an application on another server. And let's see here, we go to our cash register page, and this button right here, when it's clicked, opens a page. It's going to navigate to a custom URL, so it's going to go to a third-party page out here. It's also going to open this in a new tab, so we don't really ever close the cash register application. You can see there's quite a bit of information that's sent to that new page. So the destination URL is here at this application URL that I've created in Python, and it's an API called cash register, which accepts from the form data the email address of the buyer. So the first thing that's going to accept at that endpoint at the other application is this form data, and then it's going to look at our go through our list of multiple rows, so all of the line items that are on this page, and it's going to concatenate a little bit of this. Thank for your purchase of items. It's going to show us all of the items we purchased, and then it's going to has a little bit of text here that says price. It's going to show all of our prices for those items. Quantity, it's going to pull out from our data source all of the quantities, and then there's a little bit of text concatenated here with each of these lines has a comma at the beginning, and it's going to pull out all the items from the subtotal column, and then it's going to provide this final total, which is our data source, which we call get single row, and is the calculated total of all those line subtotals, which includes the tax. So this bit right here, this is beyond the scope of base row work, and it's something that we can't get done in base row. So we're going to do this at another server, and this is really where base row can be useful and can be easily extended. So you're not limited to what you can do in this interface in base row. Anything you need to do with any data that is available in your database can be sent to another application written in any programming language you want. So I mentioned this in a previous video. What I'm using here is a tool called Anvil. You can go to anvil.works. This is an all Python web building framework. So you can write pure Python, including for the user interfaces. And I'm going to show you some more applications that are actually written using some Python Anvil user interfaces. But for this one, what we're doing is I've got in my applications here what we call an API endpoint or an HTTP endpoint. These are sometimes called REST API endpoints. And this uses Python. You can begin to learn how to do this with any of several thousand tutorials online, but this is fairly simple Python code, and it's not too hard to get started with Python. I have a tutorial for Anvil, which will show you how to do this. You can look it up. I just look for Learn Anvil, and you'll see right here below the Anvil website, I've got this link at Python Anvil. You can learn this from this tutorial. If you've never done any Python programming at all, start from the beginning. It'll teach you everything you need to know as well as how to use Anvil. It's out of the scope of this tutorial to go through that, but to give you a basic idea of how this works, we're going to create this little endpoint function. You can see the endpoint is called cache register, and it's accepting, just like you see in base row, it's accepting a value and then another value. The first value is the email value, and the next value is the message value. And we have a Python function here which is called send receipt email. It's taking those email and message parameters which have been passed to this application, and it's performing a little decode on that, so it takes out some of the funny characters that are going to be sent across the internet, the way it's encoded to be sent from the form. And then we're going to run an Anvil function, part of what's in the Anvil framework, to send an email, and the from name is going to be cache register, and then the to address is going to be this email address which we've passed to this endpoint. We're going to put a subject of cache register receipt, and the text of the email is going to be this decoded message, which was the decoded message of the text that we've passed. And what that's going to do is return a little bit of text here. It's going to return a response of 200, which means it was successful, and then a little concatenated bit of text here that says the receipt was successfully emailed to whatever that receipt is, and it's going to send that as text or an HTML so that we can view that. So that's some Python, again, a little bit out of the scope of what to do here, but so you can get a basic idea of what's happening. We've created an endpoint in this Anvil server called cache register where we're sending some pieces of information, the email and the message. So let's go back and look at our base row events for this email button one more time. So what we've done is passed to this API we've created, which is here, and let's take a look at that. You can see it tells you here endpoints of this module are accessible here. You can set that up in Anvil. You create a URL for this, and this, by the way, is all free. You can host all these things completely for free and run any Python code that can do really anything you can ever need to do in any sort of computing situation. So this little endpoint is part of what's free at Anvil, and this is the path that we have to send it to, that we've created for this Python API. We're sending that to this URL at this little cash register endpoint that we've created in Python. Again, what we've done, you can see here I have a little /, and in between that first / is the email address, which was a form data that's been entered by the user. And what's after that next / is this whole big long message which we're building. It says thank you for your purchase, and it lists all the items and lists all the prices and quantities and subtotals and totals. So that is what's being passed. This is our URL which is being opened at this Python application here, at this cash register ID, and accepting all those values. So that's a little bit more of an insight into how these applications are going to get built and extended in ways that Base.Ro can't do on its own internally, at least not yet with the feature set that it's built with. So this opens up an entire world of computations and integrations with other systems. If you, for example, wanted to save these values in a spreadsheet, you could use Python to connect to your Google account, and Anvil, for example, has a bunch of Google integrations, so you can work with Google accounts. If you wanted to send this to a service that, for example, sent out SMS messages, you could do that with Python, and you could use Python to integrate with a service, a company like Twilio that sends out SMS messages. So all that stuff can be done with Python, and it's not a problem that you can't immediately do that with Base.Ro. You just integrate the data that you have here in your application with some third-party Python. And because of the way Base.Ro is set up, it doesn't have to be Python. It can be any programming language, and it can also, these integrations that are external can also include things like N8N, which is a no-code system that you can use to process data and connect with other services. So we'll continue to build on these sorts of examples, but I think at this point we've covered everything that's in this example. It's a simple, very, very simple point of sale system, but I think it's a nice round trip through an application which performs some more data processing that's typical, very similar to what we've seen in the other tutorials, and adds a little bit more and clarifies a little bit more about how you can work with external servers. So we're going to do more with Anvil in the next tutorial. We're going to build a file uploader, and we're going to use Anvil first, and then we're going to use another Python system, so you can see again a little bit more how we can integrate with the Base.Ro API and the Base.Ro system, and use other tools to improve the applications. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned.